Welcome to the second video of Stands to Reason, Gravity and the Gravity Interlock. My name is Dan, and I will be your host for this video. I broke this video into two parts. The first part, this one, explains how I found gravity. And the second part is how gravity works. I did this so you wouldn't need to keep watching this part every time you wanted to watch part two. In the first video, Everything is an Element of Elements, I introduced you to a way of viewing the universe as a simple mechanism. Instead of thinking of a bird, a rock, a doorknob, or a group of people, think of each thing as an element of elements. Since everything is an element of elements, then the next objective is to stick the elements together to form bigger elements. Because what gravity is has become muddled over the centuries, the first thing I want to do is give some background on the origins of gravity, or more precisely, the origin of the concept of gravity and its current definition. As the story goes, about 300 years ago, a man named Isaac Newton saw an apple fall from a tree. Isaac was curious as to why the apple fell. He reasoned that there was a force that pulled the apple to the ground. He could not figure out what that force was, but he established some laws that illustrate the effect of that force on the apple. The laws he created do show how gravity acts. If you throw a baseball, you can use his laws to determine how far it goes, where it lands, and such as that. The effects of gravity that we know today are governed by his laws. Now, without knowing what gravity was, he postulated that gravity is a pulling force, a force of attraction between objects. Hence, he reasoned that the earth pulled the apple off the tree. Now, fast forward a couple hundred years, because nobody had been able to figure out what gravity really is, because everybody was still, and still are, saying that gravity is a pulling force. And that really doesn't stand to reason. But they're saying it anyway. Another fellow by the name of Albert Einstein thought he would have a crack at explaining gravity in a different way. Now, I'll admit, I cannot grasp the concept of what Einstein was saying. I don't get it. As best as I can figure out, he said that gravity is a function of the space-time continuum. And I believe that this is explained by setting a bowling ball on a trampoline. And the weight of the bowling ball makes an indent on the trampoline, and that indent illustrates what the Earth makes in the space-time continuum. And gravity is somehow a function of this. I think this is what he says, and it seems to be the accepted description of gravity today. But hey, whether I'm right or wrong about what Einstein said, it doesn't matter. It's not right anyway. It's not what gravity is. And besides, gravity as a function of the space-time continuum has nothing to do with an apple falling from a tree. I was not comfortable with either definition of gravity. I needed to look at gravity in a different way. In doing so, I eventually asked myself a simple question. How did the apple get on the tree in the first place? Of course, the answer is it grew there. Well, then the next question, what does grow mean? I followed this growing process backwards from the apple. The apple grew on a tree, the tree grew from the soil, The soil is composed of the original elements: iron, nitrogen, oxygen, potassium, to name a few. And if you watch the video, Everything is an Element of Elements, this process translates to the apple is an element of elements of the tree. The tree is an element of elements of the soil. The soil is an element of elements of the original elements. I'm just running the growing process backwards, and it is a very short trip I get from the apple to the original elements. Apple, tree, soil, elements. Well, then I tried to construct these original elements back into an apple. If I could go backwards, then I wanted to go forward. I could not find a way to stick the elements together. I tried Isaac Newton's explanation that gravity is a pulling force. All I get is a blob of every element vying for any position in the apple. I actually could not even get to the apple because the soil kept pulling the tree down. I couldn't see how, with the earth making millions of apples, how a pulling force would create the exact same shape of an apple every time, even with a map called DNA. Then I tried Albert Einstein's definition of a function of the space-time continuum, but I couldn't get anywhere at all applying that to an apple falling off a tree. It just doesn't work. I needed something sticky to hold the elements together long enough to become soil, then get up the tree into an apple, and then to be on the ground once the apple fell again. And that's when I found gravity. The gravity that Newton was trying to find. The way gravity works and what gravity is closer to what Isaac Newton observed when he saw the apple falling off the tree than to what Albert Einstein said. As it turns out, gravity is not the pulling force that Newton believed it to be, and the apple doesn't fall from the tree. It is not pulled towards the earth. So I believe that Albert Einstein simply appropriated the word gravity into his work, and that what he discovered, which I don't have a clue of, was something other than the gravity that Isaac Newton looked for and observed. In this work, I'm giving the concept of gravity back to Newton, and I'm correcting his flawed observation about gravity being a pulling force. And something I should mention here, because of Isaac's laws concerning gravity, they still work. When you see what gravity is, it will not alter your mathematics. When you throw a baseball, all your calculations will still be the same. If you want to do gravitational lensing, the math will still be the same. Stay tuned for part 2 of Gravity and the Gravity Interlock. I'm Dan. This is Stands to Reason, and welcome to Longevity. Thank you.